Kirk Cousins is going to be a much bigger role than I think people anticipate. Here's what I mean by that. He might be the most important player on this roster in 2025. And that's not me trying to get clicks or trying to get likes, because this is going to piss off a lot of people, as I did last week. Michael Penix Jr. is a rookie. Like, I don't care that he played 3 games. Until you get to 17 games, you're still a rookie. And he's a rookie with a high upside. And so for me, when you have a guy who hasn't seen a quarter of what NFL defenses are going to throw at him, having a guy like Kirk Cousins that can be there for him in that room is monumental for his development. You can speed up his development, you can help his development, or you can even hinder his development if you're not there. And so for me, Kirk Cousins is the most important player on this Falcons roster in 2025 because of what he's going to mean to Michael Penix Jr. We can talk about defense. We can talk about Drake London. We can talk about the rookies and Walker and JPJ. We can talk about London Floyd. We can talk about Bijan Robinson. We can talk about all of the bullshit. Kirk Cousins and the role he will play in 2025, and that role is in Michael Penix's development, is crucial and monumental to not only this season, but what that dude's going to look like moving forward. And so I think as much as people don't want what they perceive to be a circus, they want to move on from him. They're still pissed off about last year. I have taken the stance of kind of like the Falcons have of like, relax, dude, like chill the fuck out for a minute. I don't think people realize or even want to think about how important he can be and will be for Michael Penix's development. Go back and watch those 3 games last year. Who was the first person that 9 went to when he came off the field? It was Cousins. He was throwing touchdowns. Who was the first one out on the field to celebrate him? It was Cousins. Right. So, you go back and go back and watch some of those things with like Johnny Manziel. Not to say he's on Michael Penix's level, but I'm just saying he talked about what he felt like what hurt his development was the quarterback room in Cleveland. Dudes were trying to sabotage him. And when you have a young guy, no matter how mature he is and no matter how great he might potentially be or how much, he has between the ears, you want the best for your young quarterbacks. And so the best thing for a guy like Michael Penix is a seasoned veteran with 15, 16, 17 years in the league that can say, you know what, take a deep breath. Here's what you need to look for. Here's what you missed, and relate to him on that one-on-one. Because anybody who's ever played sports, I don't care what level you played at, there are a lot of times you ignore your fucking coaches and you take better you take better direction from older players. Right. And that's especially in this league. Most of the coaches in this league didn't play. Yes, they know the game of football better than most, but you're going to listen to that peer that you have in that room, that locker next to yours. You're going to take a lot of attention to detail of how to be a pro, how to be a leader from the older guys. And I'll say this, kind of Cam Newton said this on his 4th and 1 within the last couple of weeks. He talked about when he got to Florida as a true freshman out of Westlake High School here in Atlanta. He said, I knew I was more talented than Tim. I wasn't a better leader than Tim. I needed Tim to show me how to be a leader because he was the best leader verbally and by action, and I had never had that. That is what Kirk Cousins brings to this Atlanta Falcons team. He may not have a captaincy on his jersey this year, but he's absolutely a captain, and he's absolutely somebody that is going to be monumental and instrumental in Michael Penix Jr.'s development. And that, for me, is why that dude is the most important person on this roster as we head into training camp.
Steve Young had Joe Montana. Aaron Rodgers had Brett Favre. Brady had Bledsoe. Mahomes had Alex Smith. I'm not trying to say Cousins is, Cousins and Alex Smith are on those guys'
level. Who did Brett
level.
Favre have? I just think, who did Brett Favre have?
I don't remember off the top.
When he got to Green Bay, he had Jim McMahon, who had won a Super Bowl with the Bears in the 80s. People don't understand. People may not even know that Jim McMahon was his backup when they won the Super Bowl when he in Green Bay. To have a Super Bowl winning quarterback as your backup, as you're trying to lead a team, like that is big, right? And so for me, that's why I look at all of that, and that's why for me is the reason that Kirk Cousins is really important, because he's going to help with that. However long he's here, whether it's the entire season, it's 4 weeks, whatever it is, he is going to teach Michael Penix how to be a professional quarterback in ways that this coaching staff will never be able to do so.
Absolutely. And the thing is, look, he's already on the books for 40 million this year. Like he's going to have a cap hit there. Like free agency's over, draft's over. Yeah, we could potentially front load a contract with London or or Caden Ellis like we were talking about. But for all intents and purposes, he is counted on the cap. Now, if someone comes up to us at the deadline and makes an offer that we can't refuse, fine. But if not, he, like Jeff's saying, he's going to have a pretty big freaking role, and it matters. Having that backup quarterback matters. That story that you were talking about with Johnny Manziel, that was the quarterback he was referring to was Brian Hoyer. That guy was not helping Johnny Manziel take his job. Like, some quarterbacks have that attitude. But you know what? Kirk Cousins, first of all, the human, no way. Like, he is too nice of a person to ever do that. Second of all, Jeff, he's a businessman. Look at the guy. Second season in a row where he's going to be featured on the Netflix quarterback series. He's making a boatload of money off there. Any chance that he can further his brand, his his agenda, he's going to do it. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but if he came out and made a stink, like, you know what, not going to show up to camp, cut me, not talking, not doing this, what does that do, Jeff? That hurts him for the second half of his career, where maybe, he gets a chance to start in 2026 and it doesn't go well. Well, then in 2027, if he puts on, a smile and helps out Penix, then people are going to want him to be a backup. So this, it's a win-win for both sides. Obviously, Cousins wants to play, but, if he kind of just helps Penix out and is available to start in a pinch, like, I think that's really important too. Like, what if we're on top of the division, we're 10-0, and Penix sprains his ankle, and we need Cousins to go for 2 weeks? We will have the best best backup quarterback in the league, and that matters in a 17-week, 18-week season. Like, that freaking matters to me.
I would argue that the Falcons have the best quarterback room in the NFL. I'm sure people will say the Giants because you got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston and all those guys. I would argue that the Falcons have the best of both worlds right now. You've got one of the best young guys in the NFL, and you have a really good older veteran who's not an absolute piece of shit like we've seen other guys be, right? And so for me, I think Kirk Cousins, again, for however long he's here, whether it's the entire year up to the trade deadline, I don't know. But for the time that he's here, he will be the most crucial piece for Michael Penix in that locker room, because he's going to help that development. He's going to show him, and I'm sure he's already done a lot of this, right? In the NFL, guys learn by watching. They watch those veterans. They watch how they approach things. They watch how they do things. They watch how they practice. They watch how they prepare. They watch how they break down film, because it's not the same as in college. And yes, breaking down film is a lot easier now because there's software out there where you literally just say, hey, I need all of these plays, and it breaks it down for you. But you watch, and that was one thing about Being Tom Brady, that the Facebook documentary, where it showed him watching film like the old school way, right? Like, he was watching play by play. He was watching footwork. He was watching how, like, he was very detail oriented. And so learning things like that only will benefit Michael Penix more in the long run. And so for me, as much as people want him out of here, I want Kirk Cousins here as long as possible, because he's going to be that mentor that Michael Penix needs. And what could Michael Vick have been if he had that type of mentor here in Atlanta and had just been handed the keys to the kingdom, essentially, right? If he had an older veteran quarterback to say, hey, young man, like, here's how you need to act. Here's how you need to approach the game. Here's how you be a professional. And he didn't have that. And he even talks about how, he didn't take it seriously. And so now, for me, not to say that Penix is that kind of kid, because he's not, but you have the benefit of having a guy who's been in the league for a long time, who's had some success, who is well-loved, well-regarded around the league. I mean, you go back to last year when we went up to Minnesota, like, everybody, even that his security, came over and gave him a hug. Right? Like, and he knew everybody by name. He knew, like, and it just, that speaks volumes of who he is. And I think it's never a bad thing to have that guy around, especially when you have a rookie quarterback.
100%.
And yeah, miss me with the fucking comments. He's still a rookie.
3 games. I mean, what else do you want to call him? Like, and by the way, how good he looked in those 3 games, I think Cousins gets some credit for that too. Like, just, you know, Penix is watching him, like you said, he's taking notes, he's preparing himself by watching Cousins. Like, I understand that you guys are like, oh, Falcons, what morons, they gave Cousins 90 million over 2 years. Well, I mean, if that 90 million helps Penix for the next 15, then that's money well spent. It's like a very expensive tutor. And you know what? If that's the case, I honestly think it's good money being spent there. And by the way, just circling back on all of this, Jeff, you talked about Michael Vick not having a mentor like that. But what about Matt Ryan? Let's give him some freaking love for not having anyone like that, but then figuring it out. You can argue that, you know, Ryan took over even a worse situation than Michael Vick. We're coming off Michael Vick getting sent to prison off that Joey Harrington year. And now, you know, like, our franchise is in shambles. We hire this DC from Jacksonville named Mike Smith that not a lot of people probably know about. Everyone was so low on us when we drafted Matt Ryan, and he stepped into that role with grace, led our franchise for more than a decade, took us to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done. But man, that, just looking back on that, and not like not having a mentor like that makes his career look even more impressive.
Yeah, and not everybody is special like that. And you know, not everybody has that, or you know, not everybody can come into that type of environment and still succeed. You know, there have been very few guys who did. I mean, you know, look at Peyton Manning. He shit the bed his first 2 years. You know, he went from being the number 1 pick to everybody was like, oh my God, he's the biggest bust of all time because of how many picks he threw. And so, you know, Matt Ryan was special. And I think anybody who doesn't understand just how special he was is just a complete fucking retard, if we're being honest. Because that dude, in more ways than I think people understand, Matt Ryan was absolutely special.
You mentioned Peyton Manning, but even more recently, QBs that didn't have mentors. Josh Allen, for like his first 2 seasons, people were like, "Is this guy gonna, you know, make it, or is he a bust or whatnot?" Even Lamar Jackson, like, he didn't look too hot his rookie season either, and then he started to develop. Obviously, Flacco was there, and maybe that was more mechanics or whatnot. But then you have Joe Burrow, who, you know, he got injured his first year too. Maybe if he had a mentor, like, telling him, like, hey, like, maybe, like, you don't want to take those hits or whatever, maybe he would have taken less hits or whatnot. It's hard to play Monday morning quarterback with something like that, but by and large, the QBs with mentors end up hitting the ground running versus the QBs without.
100%. Yeah, absolutely 100%. And so, that for me, all of that said and done, I don't want to see a guy like you know, MP9 go through those issues. I'd rather see him have the success that he deserves to have. And so for me, Kirk Cousins, probably the most important Falcon on this roster as we head into training camp.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny because Terry Fontenot's quote unquote biggest mistake might end up being a blessing in disguise. Like, that's the cool part about this. So when you hear all of this national media people talking about, oh, Falcons cut Cousins or whatever, or, you know, trade him for a 7th, and Falcons, by the way, trade him for a 7th and absorb his contract, get the hell out of here with that shit, man. We have a plan for Cousins. He's going to be a vital part of 2025. We're not trying to look. Obviously, you go back 2 years, you don't hand him that contract. But he's here. He's proving himself as a mentor. I like what I'm seeing. I like what I saw out of Penix. So hopefully we keep doing that. And at worst, we have the best backup without a question in the NFL. We're probably the only team, Jeff, in the NFL where you can cut our starting quarterback and our prospects wouldn't change much. I don't know that you could say that about the Chiefs, about the Bills, about the Bengals. You put any of those backups in there, I promise you, they're not a playoff team. We are still a playoff team with Kirk Cousins.
100%. Yeah, and that's, you know, when I say that the Falcons have the best quarterback room, you know, if you have to go to your backup, you're not going to a Brian Hoyer.
Or an Easton Stick. Well, actually, for us, if Cousins and Penix get injured, then we are going to Easton Stick. So, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. But that takes us to the